All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the Dynascape's Intermediate Cup Grand Finals Map Pool Showcase. This is the final one. We're gonna have to take a look at what the final three teams, what maps they'll be playing on. My name is Dynascape, your host for the tournament, and today I am joined yet again by Sparky. Sparky, this is the last time we'll be commentating together on the weekends for a while. How do you feel about that?
I feel absolutely fantastic. Not about the fact that this could potentially be the last time we speak to each other in this sort of context, but it's great knowing that we have finally reached a point where we can finally just take the chains off. Kind of, we see the shuttle in the distance ready to take off, and this map pool is just no holds barred for the remaining three teams because they've been grounded for far too long. They've had to fight through these map pools that were clearly too easy for them, that we just need to push them that one step further. And I am just so excited to see how these teams are going to perform on this map pool.
For sure, I feel like for the last map, we took the training wheels off. Now, the players were playing or, riding a bike. This time we somehow took the remaining two tires off, and now, you have to find your way. Maybe you're riding a unicycle at this point.
Yeah, or those like penny farthing bicycles that was a massive wheel.
Exactly. But with that being said, we can finally get into the final maps that you guys are going to be playing on. Let's go right ahead into Rice 1. And Rice 1 is going to be Nachman Core Part 4. This is the jump stream pick of the map made by Mint. And, aside from the funny name, there is no laughing on this map. This is just pure jump stream, and it is difficult. You see the BPM 230, and of course the patterns are no slouch either.
Yeah, for sure. Anybody that's familiar with Nachman Core, definitely not for the faint of heart. Mercifully, not the full version. This is just the fourth part of it. I think during the time Mint was creating this behemoth of a chart, I think she had broken it up into different sections, and kind of funny that she kept the absurdity of it. The practice pack, of course. This is just meant to be your warm up. 230 BPM. Finally, topping out at a speed that maybe some players will start to maybe feel a tiny bit of a burn, but I think all three remaining teams have players more than capable of withstanding just this onslaught. Thankfully, mostly dedicated to pure jump stream. You don't see a lot of hands through this opening section, so not having to worry about density more so than overall jump complexity. Just making sure you're consistent through that opening.
Yeah, I think jump complexity is a good way of putting it. I think that, a lot of players, yeah, they were handling Rice 1 just fine in finals, Marisa, or Cannon, but they definitely took a big hit in terms of their accuracy from jumping from semifinals to finals, and at least from finals to grand finals, we upped the BPM by about only 6 from 224 to 230, but like you said, that pattern complexity is a big portion of it, and of course just the overall stamina drain, as we did see players kind of hit a lot of their grades towards the back half of the jump stream map last week. And so, this one being 2 minutes 41, it's still pretty long, and it's still very, very, an onslaught. Like you said, it's really never ending. Some of the transitions in between the larger jump sections are still very hard. Like you see just now, we're passing through it. Those are, 6 flams, and they can catch you off guard some of the time you hit broken jump stream as well. So, there's still a lot of tricks in this map to, get the blood flowing and make sure you're always on top of your game. So expect this one to be, of course, it's a grand finals pick, very physical, very hard. This was Knockman Cork Part 4, this is our Rice 1 selection. And going into Rice 2, of course, our speed slot of the round. This is Ska's Winds Nocturne, and I think this map is really, really funny. Just because it's like the most serene and graceful map, but you're hitting these like crazy streams with crazy drills. I don't know. You guys will see it.
Yeah, pretty light introduction here. Just a bit of a primer for what is to come from here on out. I imagine 170 BPM, you start to throw in 1/8 stream patterns. You're topping out at about 340 BPM. On single note streams, of course, we like to differentiate between the jump stream and the speed picks, where one focuses more on jump consistency, the other one focuses more on single note consistency, and it gives a little bit more leeway to play with some of those snappings. So you will see those 1/4s transition into fast 1/8 transitions before going back and forth throughout here, and it's definitely very free form, still structured. We don't want to call it just dump, similar to how we characterize some mixed rice picks in previous pools, but you definitely need to pay attention to the rhythm of your fingers as opposed to the rhythm of the music on something like this.
And thankfully, at least for this map, we have like a very short intro, and the map being about 2 minutes probably makes the main bulk of the streams be about, you know, a minute and a half or something like that. And I should probably mention that, yes, it does top out at 340 BPM with 8 streams, but it's technically like vocal dump to match the intensity of the song and the singers. So it varies anywhere from 1/6, which would be about 255 BPM, to 1/8, which, of course, as mentioned, is 340 BPM. So not as, you know, daunting as it initially we made it out to be, but still, of course, grand final speed maps are always going to be a terror for a lot of players. So, and of course, look at that jack. Look at that funny long jack.
Nah, that's cruel at the very end. Keeping it together, you're trying to get your fingers back into position. You start like flamming all those double stops, and I can see some 200s getting dropped at that ending. But that'll do it for Rice 2. We can move on to Rice 3. It will be Blood St. Child's Electricity.
So with this map, this is more of our mix / stamina focused pick. Probably more leaning towards stamina side of things. A lot of the patterns presented are like very light, pretty handleable 6 jump stream, and so that's going to be about 243 BPM. So I mean, and especially if you look at the length of the map, 3 minutes and 30 seconds. This is a very, very long map, and the longest that we have in the Rice pool, except for one. And so, you know, definitely a stamina pick. We saw, like I mentioned, a lot of people just like lose stamina starting in some of the finals Rice maps, especially in the back half. You know, they'll find a lot of 200s, they'll find a couple of misses, stuff like that. So this is really only reserved for the most physical players in the pool. So if you think that your Rice duo, you know, can beat the other in terms of Rice physicality and of course stamina, this is the map for you.
Okay, do take a tiny bit of a break from that basically jump stream burst section to kind of get into that tiny anchor mini jack transition. It's a tiny bit of a break before you dive right back on into it, and it really is going to be a test of players that know how to read their way through structures like this versus those that kind of try to get away with rolling their way through some of these patterns, because of the fact that some of them are a little bit staircase oriented. You might want to try to, dare I say, manipulate your way through some of these patterns, but there will be some cost to your accuracy. You might not be able to get away with it as well as you might expect. So it'll be interesting to see those that get put up against the more physical oriented teams remaining if somebody you want to use this strategically to try and wear out a team, or to just see if the other team can hang in terms of physical stamina. Because like you mentioned, this is 3.5 minutes. It is one of the longer maps in this pool, and it's just non-stop what you're having to do when the stream starts to come down.
I do think that some of the hidden difficulty that should be mentioned is just the fact that you're playing 1/6 jump streams, because I feel like, you know, some people have it ingrained into their minds that, you know, 1/4 jump stream is obviously the norm, and, you know, for a lot of people, when they have to play 1/6 jump stream, just something in their mind explodes and they can't act it as well. And so, you know, be on the lookout for that, because I do think that it's kind of like you can mind block your inherent MA just by playing the map. And so, I mean, Electricity, definitely probably, you know, a hard pick in terms of how the Rice pool is gonna go. So I'm not, maybe we'll see a couple bans off of this just because of how demanding it is, but that is gonna do it for Rice 3. That was our stamina pick. We can start to get into the mixed Rice picks of the Rice pool, and we're gonna start off with the Rice 4. Again, this is Dynascape's Intermediate Cup DICs, and over here we've got the Woodman. This is high 19s Woodman at 1.3. This is our mixed pick, and it kind of just throws a lot at you very fast. Streams, very fast mini jacks, just kind of the whole kitchen sink.
Yeah, just very cut and dry, different technical patterns, a lot of broken streams to kind of keep you on your toes. A lot of these transitions also introduce some implied mini jacks, some pure mini jacks as well, before jumping into another stream. So basically, keeping your fingers light is going to be the name of the game for this particular pick. Some staircase rolls as well. Can definitely see that going wrong when you transition back into the second quarter, and it just does not stop from here on out.
Yeah, it's pretty funny to mention the staircase rolls actually vary in snaps as well. So, you know, there's a bit of a timing change there. But, I mean, I think that this map scales so harshly. Like, if you play it on even 1.2, I think you'll find that it's going to be very comfortable. But, of course, with all the mini jacks involved and all the little bursts, once you start to hit that point in terms of rates where you start to lose accuracy a bit, or maybe feel uncomfortable of seeing it, this map is such a demon. And of course, a lot of the patterns in this map are true to high 19 style, where they're just very tough. They're very, you know, old school and feel very tough to play.
Yeah, it definitely pushes you to your limit. It's incredible what a couple of BPM can do to the difficulty of a chart, where what would be a very comfortable pattern to read through just forces your fingers, forces your brain to reevaluate what they need to be doing, and you start to kind of overthink the patterns a little bit. And it's, as you make your way into this back half of the chart, it just feels like the layering progressively gets harder and harder as you continue to try to read through. And I mean, once you reach this sort of level where we're trying to pull out all those stops, I mean, you can make an argument that this could also be considered like a pseudo stamina pick. You're pushing the boundaries of about 3 minutes. If you play this right after something like Rice 3, I can imagine a break might be in order, just to kind of shake your hands out, because it's the strain that you're putting on your hands after a certain point. Just, I mean, good luck.
Yeah, good luck is really the best way to put it, for, you know, obviously grand finals maps. But that is it for Rice 4, Woodman 1.3. Over halfway into the Rice pool, we can go into Rice 5, and this one is this one's really funny. You know, last week we had K-pop LN. This time around we have K-pop Rice, and this one, as you'll see by this introduction, really focuses on Trilly streams.
we came up with a term after last week's showcase for maps like this because I felt like we were doing a disservice to just calling everything that had freeform vocal styling just vocal dump. What was it, Dinah? I already forgot.
It was like sounded streams or something like that. Something as streams. Yeah. No. Yeah. That's. I'm really glad you mentioned that.
It's basically similar to. I mean, I think at this point we've kind of established a bit of a style with what we wanted to do with some of these mixed rice picks, where I described it before as freeform vocal mapping, but this kind of takes that, cranks it up to 11, gives you these unruly patterns to read through, and they're not just single note streams. You do have those jumps kind of nestled in there to turn some of these structures into things that have like implicit mini jacks that can cause you to bottom out if you're not too careful trying to read your way through it, where picking up extra misses if you do find a drop somewhere is very likely.
Yeah, thinking about it now, it was actually spoken streams was the term that we were...
Spoken streams, thank you.
So the spoken streams pick of the map, you know, a couple track transitions here and there, but we all know, as you can see with the map, that the main difficulty is going to be, like you said, you know, these streams with some of the jumps, you know, the density does match the tune of the map and how it's going in terms of intensity. And of course, I am very interested to see how people deal with the constant two-hand trills. You know, thankfully, I think we were very nice and reasonable. At least Imperial was very nice and reasonable, making it pretty spread out, and obviously them being majority two-hand trills. But I mean, I just really want to see this map pick just to see how people do on such a devious, you know, pattern mindset.
For sure. Also because you like the song, don't you?
Yeah, definitely.
Cat's out of the bag. Play it because Dinah likes the song. Please let him enjoy the fruits of his of other people's labor. This is honestly just so deceptively difficult if you're used to playing stuff like this. I imagine it's just kind of an exercise in patience, trying to get through it because of the fact that you're constantly having to shift focus in terms of where the snaps are on some of these streams. That I wouldn't be surprised if players just started trying to double stop some of the more crushed patterns to just kind of get through it, as opposed to hacking their way through it and hoping that their opponents are suffering in the same way that they are.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see people trying to, you know, light manipulate just because of the speed and physicality needed. But I mean, this is it, right? This is the probably one of the craziest picks that we have for Grand Finals Rice, and it'll really show spectators and, you know, decide who is really, you know, fit for winning this tournament. So that's gonna be it for Gods. Moving on to Rice 6. This is yet another mixed pick. This is Hylado's Uchu Yue, and this one again still in that mixed department. Very dump bursty with a good amount of jacks involved as well. I think we didn't really have too many jacks in this pool yet so far, really only being on Woodman 1.3. So I think this will sate a lot of people in terms of how they like, you know, if they prefer playing jacks over other Rice patternings.
Yeah, I think it's very important to denote that it's not a pure core jack pick. Obviously, there are a lot of very technical bursts thrown in here, but as opposed to the quote-unquote spoken streams that we were talking about earlier, we try to include that variety in the mixed rice pool, where if you're gonna do interpretive vocal stylings, you get the more rigidly structured jack-oriented pick as well, to kind of balance that out a little bit, where the bursts are a little bit more manageable, they're a little more spaced out, but you still have some element of Jack Nature thrown in there, whether they be nestled inside of these bursts that you see coming down right now, or just more purely structure where it transitions back into more of like a 1-2 groove. But I mean, it being mixed, you gotta be able to handle those transitions as well, and these are some very nasty transitions.
Exactly, and I think, a lot of the difficulty being from transitions, you'll find yourself, having to hit these pretty fast streams, and then the jacks, like you said, nestled in between them are almost always doubles as well. So just that like added layer of density to the point where you're already hitting fast streams does make for a very, very tough map. Thankfully, I think that this map gives you a decent amount of breaks. I think there's a total of 2 big break sections, one in the first third, and then what we're seeing now in this last third. But again, this map is pretty long, 3 minutes, so it might be more of a consistency feel if you can comfortably FC this map. I'm not sure if too many people can, especially with the abrasiveness of the patterns.
Oh, we say stuff like that, and then we consistently have our minds blown at the levels that players can kind of achieve whenever we put them to the test. And the good thing is about this map in particular is the fact that it kind of gives up the ghost a little bit in terms of what it's trying to do. You can kind of segment the map into different parts where it's like, okay, I'm going to go into a mini jack, chord jack, glut section, and then, okay, we get into the breakdown. I know I'm going to be doing these freeform bursts where I know I'm going to need to speed up, and then if you can time it right, I need to transition back and calm down and slow down the fingers. Going to get into the break. Please don't break on the break sections. It happens so often.
So often, it's
it's ridiculous, but honestly, it makes for good entertainment. That will do it for Rice 6. We can move on to, I believe it's going to be the last one.
Almost the last one, Rice 7, and then we
Rice
just have
7.
the project pick last. But I mean, honestly, you're gonna wish that this was the last one for the players out there, because this, I think, is the hardest Rice map in the pool by just a staggering amount. It is evil. I don't know how else to describe it. It is evil. There is bad juju in this map. It's cursed, and you guys are gonna be the exorcists to fix it.
It's a great way to put it. It's an exercise in being able to handle polyrhythmic structures. You have basically these anchors on the outer columns while you're having to do basically what are like 5/7, 3/5 patterns on the other columns. If you are more into music theory, just having to time those. It reminds me of something like it's not Frums, but it has that Frums mapping style when mappers try to interpret their style of maps, where you're having to play at very odd time signatures, and it makes for a very chaotic feel as you read through it. And thankfully, it's about a minute shorter than some of the other maps that we have seen, only about 2. But it gives you less opportunity to recover if you do find yourself a little bit lost in the sauce while you're making your way through this chart.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, just handling the polyrhythms presented as well as the weird anchored jacks is such a huge Herculean task for anyone involved. Thankfully, if this pick is thrown at you, only have to suffer through about 2 minutes of it. But I'd have to assume that, this is, if coordination could be moved from the LN to the Rice category, this is like, definitely a coordination-y Rice pick. There's just so much involved for you to try to handle at once. And of course, 200 minimization and miss minimization, like I always love to talk about, is going to be the name of the game on this pick, just because you can find yourself losing accuracy so easily on the flams, like jacks, the weird rhythms, hitting late and early, stuff like that. So that's going to be it for Rise 7. One last pick, and that is the core jack pick of the map. This is Rise 8, Tails DK's Sidral.
Yeah, bumping up the BPM to its final stage, 140. Gonna be a nice little mountaintop for players to see if they can handle This increased BPM, I think, maybe not as dense as Edison, but as it starts to build up, you start to see those 3-note chords start to rain down. Not a lot of quads to this introduction, but I've always found that these 3-note to 2-note chord transitions are always so hard because you lose track of which finger needs to be the one doing the anchoring at these certain positions. And once you get out of that introduction, you get a tiny bit of a break to kind of settle the nerves a little bit, but you'll be diving back on into it before too long.
Yeah, I can't wait for people to call this the Ellen map just because of this little break section. But I mean, kind of like you said, it's definitely faster than Edison. We pushed it up from, I believe, Edison was 133 into 144 or 140 BPM, and then the density isn't as much as Edison. It's very slightly below it, but still hard nonetheless, of course. And people were already struggling a fair amount on Edison, so this is very much going to be a contested pick. Do you go for the bans just because you weren't able to play Edison very well last map, or do you protect it because you are able to more often than not hit an FC on this? And I have to assume for a lot of people that isn't going to be the case, where they can FC this very cleanly, or at least often, or in the match setting even. And I should probably talk about the length of the map again, because I think for a lot of people that will stand out to them just almost immediately. 4 minutes of chord jack is, obviously very long. We're already draining your stamina through so many other of these rice picks, so you do have to keep that in mind as well. Do you want to go through 4 minutes of essentially 140 BPM mid-density chord jacks? Thankfully, there's, I think, 2 or 3 break sections in the map total aside from the intro, but still, it's just such a tall challenge for those involved.
Absolutely. I feel like we presented a lot of very good candidates for bans, and I feel like it comes down more to the overall length of the chart as we approach this second break. It does bear mentioning, as you go through that second real gauntlet of chord jacks, it's pretty telegraphed where the hand patterns are going to be. Everything's on that consecutive downbeat. You're not having to play like an extended stream of 3-note chords in back-to-back succession. But do be wary of the fact that it does break from those 1-2s, gets into a bit of a swingy 1-3 feel every now and again, that if you're kind of autopiloting your way through it, can definitely catch you off guard. As you make our way into this last quarter of the chart, things kind of lighten up a little bit. We get a tiny bit more mini jacks as we make our way into this ending, things kind of calming down a little bit, but you still got to be wary of those 3-note chords that come out. But definitely a little bit more manageable, a chance to maybe catch up if you felt a little bit behind through as we make our way into this pure outro.
Yeah, I think even in that lighter chord jack section, it's kind of swapped out where you trade density for more of those anchors. You'll see a lot of 3-note anchors in that section, and then we get right back into basically a reiteration of what we saw in the main portions, where you're hitting this final phrase after being in this map for so long. This mid-density chord jack, it's very much the breaking point. Thankfully, it's not as dense as it could be. There's a lot of singles to go with it, but still, you must be gassed out by then, and it's gonna be a large challenge. That is it for the rice picks of the pool. That was rice 8, 140 BPM chord jack. And going into LN1, this is our release pick. This is Phony, and I think this is a pretty reasonable jump in terms of what we'd expect from the release category in the pool. Last week's pick of what was it called? Back to the City. It was very, very rigid in structure, where you had very telegraphed 1/4 staggered releases. This one, not so much. It dives into these weirder snaps, and of course, they're not as square as they should be.
Yeah, definitely. Basically unshackling where everything is meant to be released. A lot of staggered starts, a lot of staggered stops, things not ending where one may think that they do, and can find it very easy to just bleed accuracy. This is another one of those like clear-cut examples of a map where you might have the physicality to FC your way through it, but you look at the score afterwards and it's like, huh, that's a 98.5% FC. Where did all the accuracy go?
Exactly. I think that's been the running theme for release.
Yeah.
For LN players, that I guess they have the physicality to play the map, but maybe not the reading involved. It's like they can FC it, but then they don't really know where they drop to 200s. And at least for Back to the City, we saw a lot of people pretty proficient on it. So I do think that this map here provides a decent jump for people to start really catching out misses like for real, and then also just taking constant hits to your accuracy. I would have to say that the break sections in between aren't super harsh, but of course the main difficulty of it during the courses are such a big jump from what your usual difficulty is outside of the core sections.
For sure. So as we make our way into this last third, things kind of settle down a little bit. It's a chance to kind of reorient yourself, even in the verse sections in between these interludes. You get these medleys where it harkens back to like a harder version of Kickback, where you have these like little intricacies in between some of these longer LNs, where you're playing like these rapid bursts, or it's like a shield pattern at the end of some of these releases that can definitely catch you out if you're not ready for the sudden rehit on that same column. And as we dive into this last chorus, it really just all culminates into what could be essentially described as like just walls of varying snapped LNs that it's basically, I think the propensity for this chart is there's going to be a lot of overholding going on to try to keep things steady. And it'll be very interesting to see which of the teams remaining just kind of brave this pick to try and catch out their opponents.
And moving into LN2, this is that's the pick of the map pool. We have Lot's defended counterattack. And I think that at least for the finals map pool, a lot of people kind of saved LN2, which was Lot's Desire, off to the side as their like final LN choice, because I think we saw a lot of LN4 being banned. So I don't know. It was really interesting to see that a lot of players didn't really vibe with the density as much and really favored Crack Tracks and Back to the City over Lost Desire. That being said, maybe this will be your go-to for the LN teams out there now, because it really ups the BPM by such a large amount. Last week it was at 170. This one is at 204. Of course, it's not as dense as it could be. Lost Desire essentially had full inverse sections for a decent amount, but this one really trades, that density for the speed.
Yeah, a little lighter in comparison, but when you do kind of dive into those faster sections, it really does put you through your paces to try and keep up with what's being asked of you. And the propensity, again, to basically, I think we've reached a point where folks have reached a level of proficiency with LNs where they can swing the FCs on stuff like this, but you start to get the little cracks in the armor here and there where you trade the ability to push through stuff like this. I mean, this is incredibly hard runs where you're having to hold on to things longer than you're expecting to for accuracy, and this might just be a test of survival for certain teams to basically get through this, see if they can maybe combo game their way through it at the expense of that accuracy, and seeing if maybe that's enough to see them through at the end of the day.
Very, very tough and speedy pick for the density choice this round. That was Lot's defended counterattack and the density pick. Go on into LN3. This is Imperial yet again, this time showing in the form of Suiso's Empath. And this is starting to get into the wildcard picks. This one definitely combines a lot of release and coordination elements, and dare I say, even like light tech, much similar to like Barracuda maybe from 40M.
Yeah, you can see these freeform starts, the impacts just very staggered in terms of when the actual attack of the whole chord is, and you get these implied mini jacks going into some of these LN structures. You have that one rice note leading into LN pattern afterwards, and as you mentioned, it does get rather technical, little, dare I say, a little dumpy in terms of how some of these LN walls are kind of structured, but overall there is a bit of a platform to stand on as you try and read your way through this.
Yeah, for sure. LN vocal dump is pretty rare, but I'd go as far as to say that this is LN vocal dump, and that kind of goes hand in hand with the release section. Kind of like where Phony didn't have really the most straightforward snaps. This one is very much the same. It just has that extra oomph of coordination, sometimes with the shields involved, or sometimes with very funny hand switches and stuff like that. So very fitting for a wild card pick, I would have to say. And of course, I don't think anyone's going to be able to 990 this one, surely, right? Because
surely
the amount of weird snaps and places where you can just drop 200s and take a dip to your accuracy off of hitting just like the tiniest bit early or late off of 300s is just monumental. So hopefully no one has an easy time on this one, because it's very much supposed to be hard.
Oh, for sure, but we're not outrageously cruel. You might notice the OD 6.3 does give you a tiny bit of leeway when trying to basically digest some of these releases. I imagine the players that are looking at this kind of like, perfect, a challenge for my LN skills are gonna feel like gods with that OD 6.3.
Oh, for sure, yeah. I should have mentioned that, yeah. 6.3 OD, definitely to help a little bit in terms of accuracy, but still very much a test of skill. Pretty long map, again, I should say as well. I mean, 4,000 combo, if you hit that FC, means that misses don't mean as much, but of course, you're always taking a lot of bad judgments. So that's going to do it for LN3. And, we mentioned a couple shields here and there in that map. How about a full map, chock full of them? So this is Mint's, this is Mint's Rune of Opals. This is extremely fast, about 180 BPM shields, as well as mini jacks inside as well. Very divisive map. I was talking about it earlier with some of our playtesters and poolers. Not a lot of people will like this one. There's maybe like out of the whole Osu population, maybe there's like a 5% might be generous. Maybe like 2% that can really vibe with this map and Allen Shields.
I am one of those. I really enjoy playing this, despite how bad I was at it. I remember playing like some of the early drafts of this as it was being developed. There were some conversations back and forth, like, is this too hard for this particular? I think the initial impression was like, oh, this is too hard, and then gradually it came back into the fold of like, maybe. And now here it is.
Yeah.
Honestly,
oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, it's like this introduction is like, okay, I can swing this. Then you start to get into what is essentially this kind of piano drum kit solely, where things kind of start to fly off the rails in terms of the overall density. The amount of frenetic pacing, it kind of catches you off guard. You get into these drum fills and things start to transition into that as opposed to the piano, and that's really where the crux of the difficulty in this chart is, I came to find.
No, 100% you're correct in that. And you talked about the difficulty being like, initially too hard. It should be mentioned that the initial stages of this map, and this isn't a custom, Mint kind of just had this in her back burner for quite a while, waiting to be used for a tournament with the appropriate difficulty. Mint had to tone down a decent amount of jacks. I think the guesstimate was about 25%. So if that gives you a little bit of a sense of how hard this map is supposed to be, hopefully you guys stray away from it if you're not good with LNs. Or I expect this one to be banned for uh, the non-LN teams left out there.
It's funny that we say it's like super hard. We had conversations about it. I mean, our replayer just pulling out the casual V1SS on it. I mean, hats off. Like, people are just so good at this game.
Yeah, for sure. And, Netro, Brazilian WC player, hits a 994. That should be really scary. And this is LN5, Dr. Mango's Testify. I know there are like a lot of versions of Testify, but this one we're using Dr. Mango's, and this is still very much in that wild card realm. Not sure how familiar people are with this map in general, but this one has a mix of everything. I think Empath had like release in coordination bits, and then Ruin of Opals obviously with like mainly density with shields involved and mini jacks. This one kind of combines all of that into one map.
Yeah, I think we've had this like trend with like the LN hybrid pool where we have these like structured picks where there's a very clear theme as to what's going on, and then once we get into these wild cards, it's kind of like, you know what? Yeah, this has everything. This has stagger releases. This has shield patterning. This has physicality. This has coordination. Yeah, it's perfect. The later half of these pools flies off the rails so hard that it's kind of just become a bit of a trend, and I, for one, really enjoy it.
For sure. Right now we're getting into kind of like a density heavy and field section involved. Pretty tough transition, but after you get through that, you finally hit a decent break section. I think for the first part, right before the section I talked about, a lot of its difficulty was found in just releases in general, and then once you got to the vocals, it switched up. So you'll find a lot of varying portions. Right now we're getting to a funny like inversey release section, and like I said, it should be all about kind of maintaining your accuracy, obviously, but just like having to deal with every single type of LN pattern ever invented in the history of Osumania is a really tough challenge when it's all condensed into 3 minutes and 23 seconds.
Yeah, for sure. You do have these kind of calmer sections where things, in terms of core density, kind of lighten up, but you still have those little transitional moments where you're playing these single note burst runs before diving back into what is essentially LN jump stream, LN hand stream. You have these inversey sections that hit you all of a sudden, and overall the snapping variations in here, because you're following that piano melody so closely, you get from these raw 1/4 into this like 1/3, 1/6 structure, and then suddenly you're getting hit by 1/8 bursts, things even faster than that even at certain points, that it's basically a test of ensuring that you're able to handle the raw speed at certain sections. That this is basically one of the peaks in terms of what we wanted in terms of an LN pick.
Oh yeah, for sure. It encompasses everything. It's such a good fitting wild card for the difficulty of this pool, and we really liked it and hope you guys do too. That was Dr. Mango's Testify wildcard LN5, and that being said, the LNs are over and finished with. We can get into the hybrids, and hybrid 1 is gonna go ahead and be Mirage Garden by Goon. This is technically a custom. Spilling the beans a little bit, the initial structures of this map was supposed to be the hybrid qualifier for this tournament, but then we found it too hard and said, you know what, well, Goon, can you buff this a little bit and we'll turn it into a hybrid at some point? And they did, and it wound up in grand finals.
Yeah, this is one of those maps where if you're not ready for the back half, you're probably going to be saying goodbye to about 1 to 2% of your accuracy. At least I found you get so tired through this introduction that you're kind of just clinging on for dear life at the end.
Oh yeah, I think in this intro, obviously a lot of the difficulty of it comes with the jacks and also just like handling the Ellen in between it. But at least for me, I found the streams later on in the map to be so like the main difficulty of the map. They're super fast. I think they top out at 12ths at the most quick sections. So it's super tough, and the streams are actually very long as well. We're finally getting off of that first section, so I'm mostly done with the jacks, and little light LN section as well. I don't think really there hasn't been a lot of LN difficulty presented in this map so far, and of course, it should be said that this is the map where you'll find most of the difficulty on the rice, where it's the rice biased hybrid. And here we finally go into some of these streams that I was talking about. Weirdly enough, this isn't like the longest or hardest stream, but I hope you guys find this one difficult because I sure did.
Oh, for sure. This is so hard to read through. Even when you are expecting it, it's just the pattern complexity with the snaps involved as well. It's one of those where you could easily find yourself, even with practice, just completely spiking that entire section. But mercifully, you do get a tiny bit of a break afterwards. You dive back into this more calm LN section. And calm in the context of this chart, because it is so incredibly frenetic.
Yeah, and we finally passed through like this shortest bit of an LN section, and here we go with some more. A couple funny snaps to go with the rice, and then like density light sections as well with some shields. This is really like the hardest LN difficulty that you'll find in the map, and then after we pass through this section, we finally get into the last stream section, which is a redux of what we saw midway through the map, but I think even longer and more difficult.
Yeah, it's just encompassing the guitar solo along with what the drums are doing to kind of give you the couple of jumps here and there, but overall it's deceptive in that yes, you understand what is being presented to you, but when you're being asked to hit it in that moment, I don't know. There's just, like when I was playing through that section, I think you can kind of attest to it as well. It's just like the brain kind of just turns off for a second. It's like I forgot how to play any sort of rice patterns ever.
There's some magic mixed into these patterns for sure, especially in the streams. So make sure you're not bewitched by this map, and make sure that you can play this one properly, because this is a toughie. This was Guden's Mirage Garden Hybrid 1, more of a rice biased map. Go into Hybrid 2, and this is more of a 50-50 where you find the LN difficulty and rice difficulty to be about the same. This is Epic Man 2's Manifest, which is a custom, so shout out to Epic Man 2 for making this map for us.
Yeah, and if you know Epic Man 2, some of the things that they like to do when it comes to mapping, it is very Gray Snow Flam heavy in terms of their technical interpretation of maps like this. When you throw in the LNs as well, it's wild to see what they can come up with. It is so nice to play through something like this.
For me at least, I feel like with this map, it's like very reading heavy, where I really feel like I can physically hit these patterns, but just the patterns in general throw me off just the ever slightest bit, and I end up hitting like a TV rush or a slew of bad judgments all at once. So definitely watch out for that, because I do think that this map, if you do take a miss or a grade, there's sure to be a lot more upcoming soon after that.
Yeah, and it's nice that this is the 50-50, so you're getting basically these intricate rice bursts, and then you get these also equally as demanding LN bursts as well, and they kind of start to blend together into just a perfect concoction of what we try to look for in hybrid charts. And just as quickly as it starts, it ends so abruptly, where it's like you feel like this map should go on, but it's our shortest map so far, under 2 minutes.
Oh yeah, for sure. That is gonna do it for Hybrid 2. That was Manifest by Epic Man 2, and for the last uh, usual map of the map pool, we have Abraxas's Mend. So very, very tough one. I think pretty popular as well. So I think a lot of players left in the tournament might know this map a decent amount. And I should probably mention that all the hybrids, funnily enough, start with the letter M. We've got Mirage Garden, Manifest, and Mend. But yeah, I mean, Abraxas with this map definitely cooked, and it's not really like Daylily. It's definitely a bit different in structuring, but you know, obviously more tough.
Yeah, for sure. I always like to say whenever I see Abraxas' name, I just know I am in for a rough time because of the fact that, similar to like Epic Man, giving both of them their plaudits, where it's like their interpretation in Abraxas' case of stuff like this, where it's there isn't that much going on in the song itself, but what they manage to conjure up in terms of what they want you to play, what they're hearing and what they feel should be in those places is just so unique. It is so nice being able to basically make players play this, because it is so difficult to maintain consistency on something like this.
Yeah, consistency is a good way to put it, because or at least, you know, in terms of accuracy, consistency, because I feel like with a lot of Abraxas maps, you know, you can physically hit them, and you know the patterns might look a bit tricky, but somehow your brain makes you hit them. But it's really all about not hitting 200s on some of the funkier patterns, especially when it comes to LN releases, at least for a large part of this first half.
Yeah, for sure. It does bear mentioning. It's like we do have some pretty lengthy charts in this pool. So for teams that kind of autopilot their ban decisions, it's like, okay, we're just getting rid of the longest one because we don't want to deal with it for as long. We don't want to tire ourselves out. You have a long pick in the rice pool. You have a long pick in the hybrid pool, and there's equally as long picks in that LN pool as well. So you gotta kind of pick your poison in terms of what style of chart you want to play through the least. And there's arguments to be made for all of them as you make your way into the back half of this chart. However, you do take a bit of a break, a brief moment, to see where you guys stand at the 2/3 point before basically going into, we kind of tone down everything a little bit to maybe settle the nerves, build up some combo, build up some accuracy, see if maybe it's doable to make the comeback. But we'll see how it unfolds as we approach the final quarter, see how things begin to build back up here.
Yeah, and you know, this map is very, very long. I think our longest regular map of the entire tournament, clocking it at 4 minutes and 20 seconds of regular drain time. And for that first third, or first 2/3, I should say, there really hasn't been like a super crazy Ki. It always just kind of kept its usual difficulty. And this one, you know, buffs it up by just a little bit. This section is just like marginally harder than what we saw in the first 2/3 of the map. And maybe for some of the players, that'll really like make or break it with some of the denser LN sections. But I mean, maybe even those jack transitions as well, if you're not super expecting it, especially after playing for 4 minutes. Thankfully, the map is coming to close, and the rest of it is very, very calm. But I mean, it's Abraxos, right? And you're playing it for 4 minutes, so you really do have to keep in tune with at least like your LN coordination and released aspects. But
For sure.
it's gonna do it for the regular pool. Sparky, I know you wanted to say something before we got into the grand finals tiebreaker. I should mention that we're just gonna keep quiet for you guys and let you guys enjoy the map. Sparky, take it away.
Yeah, for sure. So this tournament has been basically a full ride in terms of the player base has proven once again that they need something to push them even further. We've always had in mind things whenever we like when we harken back to our beginner tournament in Cold Open Cup, we go into the intermediate section here with Dynascape's intermediate cup. And it feels like everything's kind of been grounded. It feels like we're finally reaching a bit of a fever pitch where these final three teams all fighting for that first place spot. It feels like we just need to push them that little bit harder. And I really do truly hope that we get to see a bit of an eruption in terms of the performances here. And I think this tiebreaker, lovingly crafted, put together, worked on since even before this tournament started. All I have to say is good luck.